Hello, everyone. The Advertising Club of Edmonton respectfully acknowledges that we are situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Gibb. On behalf of the entire team at the Advertising Club of Edmonton, thank you for joining us today. We are delighted to be hosting this event in close collaboration with the Calgary Marketing Association and ZGM Modern Marketing Partners. I'd like to just quickly introduce Sydney Stephen, the president of the Calgary Marketing Association. I'll have you say a few words in a bit here, Sydney, but I wanted to just first thank you again for your continued support and collaborating with us for this series. We're delighted to have you here, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to actually be here, and always, as usual, to partner with ACE on I think such an incredible series, and what a way to finish it as well. I think this is definitely going to be probably, I mean, they've all been amazing topics, but this is certainly one I think that is going to come close to home to everybody. So thanks for letting us be a partner, and we're happy to do so, and welcome to all of our members that are also on this webinar today.
That's great. Thanks again, Sydney, for joining us today. I will now introduce Jordan Mayer, Director of Value and Innovation from ZGM. As Director of Value and Innovation at ZGM, part of Jordan's role is to identify gaps in the agency, areas that need to change, develop, or grow. Through his lens, Jordan worked with two ZGM colleagues to develop the Equity and Diversity team. The Equity and Diversity team has been working for the past 2 years in a variety of areas to bring more equity and diversity to the agency and the greater communications community. Jordan has also been a past treasurer of the board and president of ACE as well. So welcome, Jordan.
Thank you very much, Scott. Happy to be here and very excited for today. As Scott mentioned, ZGM has been on a pretty in-depth equity and diversity journey for the past couple of years. We've taken it upon ourselves to educate ourselves, bring more change into our organization and into our community and our industry in order to help reflect a more diverse and inclusive community that we all operate in. We're really excited today to be partnering and bringing Skipping Stone in to share education on creating inclusive spaces and inclusive language. We think that it's not only important for this to be shared amongst our agency, but our entire advertising community for use within our own agencies and organizations and companies, but also within the role that we play in communications and sharing communications materials across our province and across Canada and maybe even across North America and the world. The opportunity that we have to share words and to share feelings and express and represent different identities is limitless. And the more education that we can have on this front to be doing it in a diverse and inclusive way, the better job that we can be doing as a community on a whole. So I'm very excited and very proud to be partnering on this and to be bringing this education to a wide group of advertising professionals.
Jordan, would you like to introduce Haley?
Sure. Sorry. Yeah, I'm very happy to introduce Haley, who is from Skipping Stone. We've had a lot of conversations about this topic and bringing this forward. I'm very excited. I think she's very excited. And with that, Haley, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. I am truly grateful to be here today with your team. And as I was mentioning earlier, it really feels like there is a way that people can kind of passively lean into diversity and equity training and awareness. And then there's the actionable way. And it really feels like that is the direction that this team and the company and the awareness of who you impact and who you reach really extends to. So gratitude on that front as well. My name is Haley. My pronouns are she and they. They are equal to me, so I have no preference. You can use which one you like. It really is, especially for what I do, a point of conversation. And I'm happy to lean into that. So I am joining you from the Skipping Stone Foundation. We are a nonprofit based out of Calgary that supports gender diversity across the province of Alberta. And we are here to support clients of all ages. I think that age range, to give you an age range, would be like 3. And then we've got clients in their late 60s and 70s who have connected to us in order to find the words and space and kind of live in a more authentic space while they're here. So we help with systems navigation, community supports, advocacy, and kind of everything and anything. There's a lot of support with families. I'm connected to Skipping Stone as a parent, and that's how that started. So we'll touch on a little bit of that down the road. I am also the proud kiddo of 2 moms. I grew up in rural Alberta with 2 moms at a time when that was a pretty rare thing, and it definitely has shaped who I am and what I value and everything else. So I'm happy to be here with you today, and I encourage, if this is your first conversation around gender diversity, please be here with an open heart and an open mind, and everybody starts somewhere. Our culture and our space and our language really doesn't provide a lot of safe space around this. So everybody has a starting point. And I love what Jordan kind of touched on. Language can either be our prison or our freedom, and representation goes along with that. So in our workspaces, in our relationships, community, family, and everything else, language is huge. So again, I hope to introduce you to creating inclusive spaces as an intro conversation. Please feel free to follow up after. If you do get stuck at any point and you need me to kind of clarify something so that it doesn't kind of hijack your understanding of the rest of the presentation, please feel free to maybe connect with Scott or Idris. I just won't be able to see if somebody put something in the chat easily. So with that, let's get into the presentation. So I am joining you today from Mohkinstsis, which is now referred to as the city of Calgary. And I understand that we are all from across Alberta. So I am from and working in Treaty 7 territory, which is the home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the home of the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Yahi, Nakota, and Tsuut'ina Nations, and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. All right, so I kind of touched on this a little bit, who we are and what we do. So people can reach out to us at any point, and there are groups that you can access without needing to do an intake. We, in this past year, have supported over 1,000 families in dozens of communities across Alberta. It has been very busy over the pandemic. So I'm just looking to close and not unmute myself. Okay, so we are going to start this today with a quick introduction to gender diversity. And what we would like to touch on is that in our culture, we are very much part of structures that are based around gender binary systems. So in these systems, somebody is, as an infant born, a doctor, doula, or maybe midwife, takes a look at parts that a baby has or doesn't have and determines that they are male or female. And from that, our culture has very strong rules and constructs around what is going to be expected from that person as they grow. So things that they'll be interested in and everything else. So somebody that as a doctor identifies as a male will be expected to grow up and be a man. They will be inclined and naturally do masculine things, and that they will be attracted to women. On the other side, again, so assigned female at birth, that somebody is expected to grow up to become a woman, and all of the rules and expectations tied to that, that they will represent and define femininity, and that they will be attracted to men. This is the stamp that we all get. The rules of our system is that you must be on one side or the other. You cannot be on neither, and you cannot be on both. You cannot choose which side you're on. All traits are absolutely locked together. And in our system, males are given more privileges and just tend to be able to access things easier in life. What we know truly is that Europeans and Western, well, European colonialism truly understood gender wrong. And so much of the world was colonized by Europeans. And there was a really intense effort to instill a gender binary system for a number of reasons. But when we take a step back and we're able to look at historical documents, and even now, a lot of these cultural spaces have been able to hold on to elements and glimpses of their previous understanding and values of gender diversity in ways that, one, we don't really have that much documentation of, and we can kind of only just begin to start to discuss. So truly, Europeans understood gender wrong, and we've got to take that step back. And so when we do that land acknowledgement, it's often a great segue into what we do, because gender diversity was something that was celebrated, understood, valued, revered across many Indigenous cultures across Great Turtle Island. So it's something that we really enjoy speaking into when we do that land acknowledgement as well, is so many things have suffered, and we're greatly tied to this side of it. What we have come to know now, and this is a great little, I don't know if maybe this is familiar to some people. So this is the gender unicorn. There are other really wonderful infographics. There's one called the Soji astronaut that kind of opens this one up a little bit further. But in that previous page that we had about the gender binary system, we just had it as one direction, and that because one thing, the arrows pointed to the next step and the next step. What we now know for how everybody identifies and who they understand themselves to be is that there are actually different spaces for this in all of us. So the term cisgender means, it's a Latin background. So cis means, or can translate to the same side as. So somebody who is cisgender means that they connect and identify on the same side as the gender that they were assigned at birth. Wanting to touch here on that gender identity and awareness is completely independent of sex. So when a doctor is looking at parts that a youth or an infant does have or doesn't have, we're really truly assigning different values on it that are cultural and other expectations that have nothing to do with biology. And if we don't touch on it actually that much here, because sex, as far as biological anatomy and whatnot, is its own area outside of gender diversity. But the diversity that exists amongst that within humans is tenfold what we've been taught and what we ever cover in high school sciences. So it just to touch on that, the occurrence of people who are born intersex is actually as common as people who have naturally red hair. So just to throw that one out there, sometimes people are kind of taken back by that we've been taught that there's a really strict binary, that you are one or the other, and there's just so much more to learn. So how we actually understand things now is that we're just going to pay attention to the icons. We've got our cute little unicorn here. Our gender identity and who we know ourselves to be and who we are intrinsically at our core is here, and it has nothing to do with other parts of our body that are there or not there. It is absolutely in our heart and in our mind of who we know ourselves to be. We'll jump down. I'm going to point at a unicorn's private area. This represents the sex assigned at birth. So these are biological and observable traits, internal or external, of basically truly geared toward reproduction and how we perceive that. We'll jump to the little hearts in the middle. A lot of times people feel, or maybe if they're just getting introduced to gender diversity, they'll feel like there's a crossover or maybe a complete overlap with orientation. And so whether or not somebody is gay, lesbian, bi, pansexual, something has to do with their gender in there. And it's truly not the case at all. So who we're attracted to is separate from who we know ourselves to be. And we're going to just kind of touch on it quickly. There are different types of attraction. So this is where maybe you've heard the term asexual or aromantic. There are physical attraction that people can experience or not experience, and then emotional attraction that people can experience or not experience. And then there's different degrees within that. So again, I invite you to kind of reflect on that and how it maybe applies to you. The final icon that we're going to look at are the dots on the outside. And what we're looking at with that is this is gender expression. This is what we wear, our name and pronouns, how we wear our hair, colors that we're interested in. This is how we express ourselves. And this is why some people are delighted to wear just jeans and t-shirts. Or in Alberta, we're gearing up for Stampede, so like the cowboy tuxedo. Just throwing that one out there. That's like, I'm wearing that to a wedding, a funeral, Sunday dinner, and Monday's work office meeting. Expression has a lot to do with who we are. And sometimes we're in spaces where we're really limited on that. And that's also an evolving thing. So gender expression, again, is independent of gender identity, and who we're attracted to. So all of these things are independent of each other, and nothing is explicitly tied or dependent of another. This is a metaphor, and it's just kind of like an extension of that to consider. So the word or words non-binary have probably come across your spaces a fair amount. This is truly for that person to define as who they know themselves to be. What this graph, or sorry, this image is speaking to is that so often when we look at things, even around gender diversity, it's presented on a spectrum of either male and masculinity being on one side and female and femininity being on the other. And you have to be somewhere on this spectrum. And so when we speak and give space to that non-binary knowledge of self, it doesn't often fall on that spectrum at all. And so this is kind of what, and it's what that Soji astronaut diagram speaks to, is that maybe it's another step in that it's not a line that we can like shift on, but we're stuck to this line. Is that maybe it's something bigger, and like our essences can like orbit around something, but maybe never actually kind of directly connect to it. So there's just beautiful ways to kind of approach this. And I find visual is often helpful for people. So if we start to think of like planets orbiting in the third square here, this person says, I don't fit anywhere up here. If I fit anywhere on a graph like this, I think it's somewhere down here. And it's just a beautiful thing. Like, we aren't here to argue with somebody and where they know they fit or where they can place themselves. It's important to be like, okay, awesome. How do we create that space for you? We also want to touch on that our understanding is ever evolving. And so the language used in the presentation today may shift a fair amount in the next couple of years as we start to truly, a big part of it is listening to community. Language can often, especially for how we work, we really want to be able to label and sticker and color code and categorize things. And that helps us understand and know where things fit. But we really want to flag that it's so important that this shifts and that there's space for this to shift. So in kind of when you're, especially because it's Pride Month, Happy Pride, when you start to look at those letters involved with Pride and what we're celebrating this month, so many of them are just kind of really gentle umbrella terms. And they're just creating space for the truths of other people, of people. And so it's important to know that like gender diversity is often kind of encompassed by this transgender umbrella. But that sometimes there are, like myself, I'm probably lean more on the non-binary side of things. My understanding of it is a little bit different, and I feel like where I fit is maybe not quite under the trans umbrella. And so it's just important to be able to have those conversations. But as what it kind of does encompass is that it really signals that somebody at their core does not feel that they are cisgender, and they align how they're expected to with gender norms associated to a part that they have that a doctor saw when they were little. Gender dysphoria is something that's really important to touch on with this because it's a big part of what we do. So gender dysphoria is, and this is a very medicalized term and pathologized term. So it's actually something that a lot of people are trying to step away from. So the term that Skipping Stone really leans into is the term of incongruence. And with youth, I'll use the word discomfort sometimes. Dysphoria is widely understood by the community, but dysphoria historically was required to be diagnosed in order for somebody to be affirmed. And so it's a term that's pretty heavy. So just a bit of a note on the history there. So gender dysphoria is distress of any kind from incongruence of any kind. So the examples that we show here, gender identity of who somebody knows themselves to be, and are they able to express themselves how they want to? Is there a connection there, or is there a disconnect? Transition is any action that creates more congruence. And so when you say, or we like to say that, like, if you've met one trans person, you've truly met one trans person. When somebody connects to Skipping Stone and they say, hey, I'd really like support with my transition, at no point ever are we like, hey, start making a phone call. The next question truly is, so what does that mean for you? Transition can truly be as small or minimal as growing hair, cutting hair, changing, shifting your name or pronouns, being able to dive into other forms of expression that they previously felt they weren't allowed to. It does not in any way mean that somebody has to pursue medical affirming care, such as hormone replacement therapy and or surgeries of any kind. That doesn't, if somebody pursues or doesn't pursue a surgery, that doesn't make them any more or less trans than, or gender diverse than anybody else. it's just a matter of connecting to what they need to feel that congruence. Being gender affirming is to respect and validate this. So it is truly to take a bit of that step back and understand that every single person in this session today has their own unique understanding of gender and their own unique understanding of their gender identity, based on experiences, language, culture, background, history, and everything else. So to be gender affirming is to hold space for everyone to truly be able to self-identify, and have that agency there in knowing themselves and being able to ask for and connect to what they need. So this one, it just kind of summarizes everything. The incongruences that someone might feel can vary, and absolutely do vary between people. And not all types of transition are for everyone. They're very individual. And I'd have to say, like, no two people that I've ever connected to have gone through a transition in the exact same way. The other thing too is that people can transition at any time. So a lot of people feel like this is new and a fad. Or we hear all kinds of things that is trending on TikTok and whatnot. It's not the case at all. People, it's often about a matter of safety and well-being, and will they lose their family or will they lose their job, and if they live as their true self. So quite often transition is about balance and how people are able to do what they feel they need to do, with kind of the responsibilities that they're committed to in life, and making sure that they can kind of get through their day. But once that balance kind of tips and their well-being and focus really needs to shift to their well-being, people transition at any time, and and it can be tricky. Quite often we know when people transition later, they're like, oh wow, I wish we'd been able to connect to you. I wish this stuff existed when I was a kid, but it didn't. And it's like, you're right, it didn't. It really didn't. So you did what you had to do and you're here. So let's talk about what it can look like now and what's available. On the flip side, as a parent, my kiddo shared her truth when she was 3. And at that time I worked at a medical clinic, and I had doctors that I loved and respected, cornering me and letting me know that I am not to allow my child to do this. I certainly wasn't having discussions about gender with my kiddo. It was just kind of truly with youth, it's a social transition in that it's more about expression. There are no medical interventions. And so my kiddo got to wear the clothes that she wanted to wear and cut her hair or have her hair in the style that she wanted. And that was it. And so there was truly no harm in that, but holy smokes, the pushback of kids are too young to know, you're harming your child, and from a number of areas, especially professional. It was an interesting experience. So I think people can transition at any time, but holy smokes, it's not easier at any time over another. It comes with its complexities for sure. We do want to touch on this here, gender creativity and development, and gender identity in youth truly begins to form between the ages of 3 to 6, so that awareness of self, who they are and what they're interested in, is huge. And it's the outside space that definitely plays a role in instilling shame and awareness of what is appropriate and what is not for culture and comfort of others. So it starts young. A question that I would love to offer to anybody here, and if you want to discuss at the end, you can, or feel free to follow up with an email, is if you've never ever questioned your gender identity, then that's okay. You've never been in a space where you've been uncomfortable and not. But at the same time, when people will be like, well, how, we get that question of like, how old can somebody be to know for sure? My question the answer to that is like, well, how old were you when you knew that you were you, that you knew you were cisgender and a man or a woman? Or how old are you when you maybe had your first experiences of discomfort around that? Sometimes we see a lot of youth who reach out to, and families who reach out to us, and the kiddos are like 10, 11, 12. A lot of times youth have a fairly androgynous body type before that. And if they're allowed to kind of wear the clothes that they want to wear and cut their hair how they want, then things are tickety-boo. But as soon as puberty starts, a lot of those changes are fairly quick, they're permanent, and suddenly kids have zero control over things that are happening, and distress can be onset very quickly of like, I was not okay with this. And so, yeah, we just kind of want to touch on that a little bit. So this one is looking at just kind of the little bit of overlap that there is. So the internal circle represents our knowledge of self, exploration, awareness, the words that we have or don't have, if there's acceptance, shame, and other intersecting identities. So if somebody is like a person of color or different cultures or belief systems, and that will all kind of interplay with who we know ourselves to be. Physical sides of things. So a lot of this can go with expression, HRT, so hormone replacement therapy, being able to help facilitate somebody or create more congruence, surgery, gender gear, etc. Within these spaces, so this is all at an individual level. So this is all important, that somebody has access and autonomy over how they view their body, and how systems view their body. So just because somebody has a uterus, it doesn't mean that they're going to use like she, her pronouns, that they're going to identify as feminine or female in any way. And so it's really important in so many spaces that we kind of start to take a look at it, things from that perspective. On this side, the overlap between internal and who we know ourselves to be, and the social, so how we have to connect and interact with the outside world. It's important that people have autonomy and space to be able to have names for their own identity, and that it's not being imposed. So, and then between the social and the physical are the ways that we express ourselves. A note on labels. So, and this is just lovely and so important. So when we choose our own labels, or don't, there's people that are like, hey, I don't need a label of any kind. We are empowered. When they are chosen for us, we lose autonomy, and the message that's conveyed is that someone else knows us better than we do. So in our culture, as soon as somebody is born, the label that is assigned to all of us is cisgender and heterosexual. It's a given, and it's assumed everywhere. So that's why we don't bat an eye at a Disney movie that shows like kind of heteronormative storylines. And we don't bat an eye if we look at a 4-year-old kiddo and ask them if they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or tease them about having a crush. That's all normal, and we're enforcing the norms with that. It's regular discussion, and it doesn't make anybody that uncomfortable. And that's because there's the assumption of this label that somebody is heterosexual and cisgender. So labels are incredibly powerful when we get to choose our own. and they are really far from being neutral when they're imposed on us from other spaces. And this applies to so many things outside of gender diversity. So I think you've probably touched on that in your journeys and sessions around equity, diversity and inclusion. Is there's a lot more going on than we give space to. In research that has been done, the primary factors, and I think this is where there's a really good overlap for your company, you as individuals within the company and your families and friends, but also in what you do as a marketing and media organization. So and the research is limited, just to kind of throw it out there, because they have to be safe spaces to have this conversation, and we're just kind of starting to have those. So the primary factors identified by trans and gender diverse individuals that contributed to a supportive and inclusive space. So cultures of support, colleague validation, being safe around the people that we're near, representation and sense of community. So in any space, if the person or topic about a person or community is being discussed without somebody from that community available and being included, chances are it's fairly biased and shouldn't be taken as verbatim and absolute. Visible inclusive practices, so much around the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, especially in Alberta, has had to remain quiet and hush hush. So it is, and truly in Alberta, especially with gender diversity, if you're part of this community, you know to your core that it is safer to assume a space is not safe and is not inclusive, and that you are at a considerable amount of risk in sharing who you are, your orientation, your identity, your name or pronouns, than to assume that it is. And the last one is that explicit and intentional policies. So all of this is about being visible and audible and accessible, and that it is at a cultural level. So when we think of things like GSAs in schools, if there's one teacher running a gender and sexuality alliance, that's what that stands for, at a school, that teacher doesn't have a team, and the culture at the school likely isn't an inclusive one. So yes, there are policies in place. Are there people there who can actually bring these things forward and shift culture? If not, it's just one person versus the rest, and it's tricky. This one is an important slide. So barriers to transition and barriers to thriving. I don't, unless you're in the arena, I use that, it's from Brene Brown. Unless you're in the arena, you truly don't know the time and energy that it takes to exist, especially as somebody who is trans or gender diverse, it is so heavy. The time and energy that goes into coming out and asking people not to share with everybody else, and educating others, and in navigating systems in every single form, in every bathroom, door marker. If you needed to put in kind of constant conscious assessment of if you were okay, the energy consumption mentally, emotionally for your day is tenfold or more of what it is for somebody who is cisgender. So this is all something that has to come into place. And so when people kind of push back about, why do we need pride, and why do people have to kind of keep announcing it? it's because we still live in a space where we're assumed to be heterosexual, we're assumed to be cisgender. That will be constantly imposed upon us at any given time in all conversations in all spaces. And it really shifts where people have to put in energy in order to get through their day or to maybe speak up a little bit. On the social side of things, social anxiety can be high. The level of risk is very high in so many other spaces. Dysphoria related challenges can also be high and a huge impact. Quite often as somebody transitions later, and there are elements of who they are, voice, hair, height, body type, anything else, where they're not going to be perceived as passing as a cisgender person. And even if people aren't even concerned about that, you know that stepping out of your house wearing things that or looking a certain way that doesn't sort of fit the general acceptance, it takes a lot. And the big one around anything to do with social connections is that fear of exile. So what is ultimately at risk with family, with friendships, relationships? Is somebody's job going to be on the line? Well, dynamics change with interpersonal relationships at work, in other social settings. So hobbies, gyms, school events, if they've got kids. There's so many things that are barriers to thriving. So we have created 10 calls to action, and these are tangible steps that are easily referred to and we feel easily understood, that can really help people shift and lean into their learning and being open to what they don't know yet, and really being dedicated to stepping into that direction of, you know what, like gender diversity does exist, and I've never had conversations about this, or so few. So like where do we start? How do we look into this? So number one is that explicitly welcoming factor. Often this can be symbolic. So the sign, a flag, a pin, pronouns on after a name in a meeting like this, or on an email signature. They don't guarantee anything, because a lot of harm has been done when this is performative. It's vital because it is a signal that likely some spaces are safer than others, some people are safer than others. And so it's kind of an invite of being like, usually it conveys, I will do my best to be a safer space for you. The next one, this I feel is a lifelong, so give yourself some grace with this. So number two, of not making gender assumptions. So this is huge, and very important based on things, especially over phone calls, but also names. We take cues about what is assumed about somebody's gender for so many spaces. So like size of feet, hands, hair, piercings, so many things. So what we want to share is that you truly can never, ever know or tell by somebody's name or pronouns or by looking at them who they truly are. It's important to be able to ask. And so if you're not in a space that you can do that, we'll talk about it in a sec. About the other step then is neutralizing language and really stepping away. English isn't as bad as other languages, but we've got a lot of value around etiquette and tradition as far as using gendered prefixes and whatnot. So the beautiful part of this one is, if you're ever unsure, or even if you forgot, you can always check in again, and we'll talk about different ways that you can do that. Respect is a really big part of this. If somebody tells us their name, pronouns, or something about their gender identity, it is our job to hold that as a truth for them. If we need help, we can always ask others. There's incredible resources, and also being open to shifting if we've made a mistake and just doing a quick correction. The last one is about practice. So a lot of this, there's this beautiful thing called neuroplasticity. And yes, it might be tricky at first to shift. There are so many other spaces where we shift on people's names without batting an eye. And so often if somebody changes a name after they've been married, or like truly every music artist or film star, I don't know that anybody is going by the name that they were born with, and that's likely still on their birth certificate. So Lady Gaga isn't Lady Gaga, and Brad Pitt was not born as Brad Pitt. And just kind of throwing some stuff out there, that there's often really easy ways to connect things to hetero and cisnormative cultural values where we don't blink an eye at any of this. But holy smokes, we get pretty antsy and uncomfortable when it comes to gender diversity. It's like, well, you can't change your name. And I think it's like that. So the gender assumption thing is huge. At the same time, we're pretty limited with language. And I was having a conversation the other day with Amelia, who is a co-founder of Skipping Stone. And she's like, you know what? I was looking out my window the other day and I saw this guy walking with his dog, and I wanted to know what kind of dog he had. And so this is that internal dialogue. And then she just stopped and she's like, you know what? Holy smokes. I am the co-founder of Skipping Stone. And here I am making gender and pronoun assumptions based on somebody's appearance. And so I truly want to extend that grace. We have been programmed deeply to do this. So number 3 in our 10 steps, asking for and using pronouns. So it's a great way to instantly signal that you're inclusive and you have some level of awareness. It's not guaranteeing that you're an expert, and it's not guaranteeing that you're not going to make a mistake if somebody has changed their pronouns with you. But it usually signals that you're open, and it's a beautiful thing. So a little note on gender neutral pronouns. So the they, them as singular is actually hundreds of years old, and it predates the singular word of you. So Emily Bronte, oh my gosh, Shakespeare, it goes back a ways. And we actually likely, if I was a betting person, I'd put $1 in everyone here, that you use singular they every single day. So if you're walking down the hallway and you come across, let's just say like a Calgary Stampede bandana, chances are you wouldn't jump to a gendered pronoun right away. Instead, it would be, well, you know, somebody dropped their bandana. I wonder if they'll know where to get it. Where can I put it so that we can get it back to them? Wonder if they know where the lost and found is. So we do that all the time. And the they, them, and theirs as singular pronouns is something that we have always had. Gender neutral language. Again, so important. Watching out for those words, ma'am, sir, ladies, guys. Guys is huge. Took me a long time. I think I'm good with it. I needed a guide star for a while. It's like, I got to start putting money towards something. So I did. And I donated it. But guys is not gender neutral. And if somebody wants to ask that at the end, I'm happy to go into it. Yeah, so just paying attention to that, especially with youth, boys and girls. There's so many other examples, and I've got a poster at the end of how we can start to neutralize our language for large groups of people. And it works better for everyone. this one's so important because when we're talking about gender diversity, it isn't just about transgender folks who truly feel like their essence is the opposite of what they were assigned. There are just as many people who identify as non-binary or under non-binary umbrellas. So that gender neutral language on forms, pricing, bathrooms, sizes for clothes, haircuts, like so many things. It's really important, and it signals a lot. Especially like when we maybe take that other step back and like, why do we have to have a gender term with this? Like, what would, like, if we didn't, how would things change? Or what is it trying to convey? So really stepping away and neutralizing that language benefits a number of things. Creating inclusive facilities, again, so important. When we talk about statistics, so trans and gender diverse people, especially youth, have incredibly high rates of urinary tract infections because they do not have safe washroom facilities to access. And especially youth in schools. So not only will they avoid bathrooms, but they will also avoid drinking water. And so now we've got dehydrated youth who are trying to get through their day, learn, and be in spaces where they don't feel that comfortable. So inclusive facilities is massive, and it seems maybe a little bit different here, but if you were to travel to New Zealand, or for anybody who has, I think almost all of their bathrooms are like, you're a human who has to use the washroom. Stop here. And that's what that is. This one is big too, and it might take a little bit to kind of navigate and spend some time on. Curiosity can be huge around gender diversity, especially if you've never talked about it. Usually our only reference, and the film Disclosure, documentary by Laverne Cox, really kind of touches on this. We don't have much to reference around gender diversity. Okay, sorry, this is checking Scott's message there. And so curiosity usually is really quite high, especially because things have been, I don't know, sensationalized. There's so many other words, the good ones aren't coming. So curiosity is a very valid feeling. Remember to check in on what you're curious about and the whys. So you may be curious about the details of somebody's gender or body, but if you wouldn't want somebody asking you that question, or bringing it up to you randomly, and in a space where you're in it, like a personal space or maybe a public space, it's kind of really important to stay tuned into those kind of things too. Nobody, and this is so important, nobody has an obligation to share or answer more than what they're comfortable. So the thing is like, when you have questions, the next question to kind of ask yourself, maybe before saying that question, is, why do I need to know this? And if it's important for somebody's need, how you're helping them access things at that time, then there's probably a valid space for it. If it has nothing to do with that, then it maybe isn't the space to ask some of those questions. This one is important, and I will acknowledge that the term dead name is something that can make people very uncomfortable. I can also touch on the history about it after. Dead name is the same as the name that somebody was born with. They often carry incredible amounts of debilitating power. And so if somebody lets you know that they are using a different name now, it is absolutely vital that you lean into that. That is somebody sharing with you that this absolutely connects to and helps them speak to who they know themselves to be. That old name did not. People don't change their names for no reason. And it's important to kind of really understand that somebody's dead name, if you don't know it, say you met somebody after they've changed their name, honestly, shut off that curiosity button. Like, there's no reason for you to know somebody's old name at all. And it's not who they are, and it's not who they see themselves as. And if they haven't been able to change their name legally, or if their old name is on other documents, it is likely far from a neutral space for them. So it can mean and really kind of trigger or be connected to a lot of harm. Number 9 is beautiful, and I think for us as humans, it's something we need to lean into for all reasons. We're gonna make mistakes, and that is okay. The best thing we can do, especially this, if we use the wrong pronouns or somebody's old name, one I will touch on, it's very obvious when it's done intentionally and maliciously versus not. So if it is a genuine mistake, it's something that we kind of say in passing, and we don't focus on it, we're not really engaged, and it'll come out quickly. Whereas if somebody is doing it intentionally, holy smokes, there's tone and energy and eye contact and body language that comes along with it. So if we make a mistake, truly, this one, pause, take that breath, and don't panic. It does not make us a bad person. What we do next is important, and it's so easy. So you can say, I'm sorry, and make that correction. You can also just make the correction and then continue on with what you were doing. And then commit to, you know what, maybe I've got to sit down and practice and like write a little note of like, Sean, like say somebody just changed their name to Sean. So Sean works in HR and he's got a dog named Bo, like, and you just kind of like, it's just kind of rewiring and making those other connections with the brain. What not to do is those really awkward, heavy duty apologies of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I did it again. I was trying not to do it. It was so hard. I knew I was going to do it. I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry. It's hard. I've got so many other things, because what that does in that conversation and that dynamic is that the person who has just been dead named or wrong named or misgendered now has to become the care provider and be like, you know what? It's okay. Yeah, I know there's lots going on, and it's sorry, like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's not that big a deal. And it changes the dynamic, and it like totally hijacks the whole conversation. So if the wrong name and or pronouns are used, truly super quick, easy peasy, I'm sorry, correction, and go back and carry on from where you left off. Or you don't even need to say sorry and just be like, that's Sean, and everything else. And number 10 is, again, it's that beautiful human thing of there's so much to learn. And sometimes this can really stress people out. And I want to drop this beautiful reminder of, as far as I know, there's no test anywhere. So yes, it can be uncomfortable if we don't know, and making mistakes isn't something that many of us are fond of, especially if we're getting corrected. But there's no test. There truly isn't. It's just a matter of connecting with somebody else and saying, I see you, I hear you, and I'm walking beside you. And holy smokes, there's so much more diversity than what we have language for or stories about and everything else. So this is our list. I can include it in an email follow-up, or it is available on the website as well. Hopefully you find it kind of like simple and not daunting. And feel free to send me questions if you do. We want to just kind of touch on something here with this. So remember that a person's gender identity or who they are is different from somebody's sexual or romantic attraction or orientation. Those are two separate areas. When we use any type of wording that conveys an other, it generally isn't a good thing. So avoiding the words like real or normal. Our trans friend isn't as pretty as a real woman. She is a real woman and she's pretty. This third point is huge, is we are so much more than our gender identity. But we get to be that when we're free to be ourselves first and foremost and live in authentic spaces. So it can be really tough when that becomes all we're seen as. Truly everybody is doing the best they can and they want to just be free to be themselves. And that's where we're able to share our spark and our gifts and energy with the rest of the world. And so that's who we are, is the sum of our experiences and our passions and our authenticity, and not just this one aspect. Truly, don't ever ask anyone about surgeries. I can't, unless they offer it. They're like, hey, you know what? This is who I am. And if you have any questions, ask me anything. Then I guess that's an open door. But in general, feel free to connect with somebody or a group like Skipping Stone, and we'll help connect you to information if you want to just learn about general information about what's available to help people with transition and expression. Let's see, anything else? Ooh, the last one is huge. So outing is what this is called. So when we share information that is not ours to share, and this can be done in a number of spaces. So it can be done about health, well-being, financial situation, relationships, like so many things. But when it's done with the queer community, it's called outing. When you have not been given permission to share information about somebody's identity and or orientation. It absolutely can put somebody at risk. Rarely is it a necessary thing. If we don't do this with perceived heterosexual or cis people, we don't need to do this with people who are gender diverse or otherwise queer identifying. Quite often, it can absolutely expose somebody to a level of harm that you are not even remotely aware of. So again, it's kind of paying attention to that is not like in paying attention to what information is ours to share and what isn't. And is it vital and basically kind of like life threatening if this information is shared or not. I'm just going to check in on questions quick. Ooh, Jordan, I love that question. So Jordan in the chat has said, what do we think of using language, preferred pronouns and sexual preference? So this can be tricky, but I feel it can be clear too. So chances are it would be better to ask somebody what their pronouns are, just in the same way as like how I would or anybody here would introduce their pronouns. So my name is Haley, my pronouns are she or they. If it's not a preference, somebody's pronouns are somebody's pronouns. And so it's not a choice. It's not dill pickle over salt and vinegar or anything like that. So it truly, and that also applies to preferred name. That preferred word implies choice and option. And that's truly not the case. and I guess anytime I see that word sexual preference, if we're not talking about this in, like, I don't know why that would need to be asked at all, especially in media work or like public spaces. When we get into medical spaces, sometimes that can be like something that maybe needs to be addressed, especially if we're looking at, and it doesn't, the thing is, like, it's more about like actions. So if somebody has a lot of sexual partners, are we here testing for certain things? But sexual preference, like, I can't see why that would really need to come up in anything. Maybe if you want to add more to that, Jordan, you can. But that preferred pronoun thing, and sexual preference too. Like, it's not, I don't know. When is it a preference? Another quick resource. Again, this is on our website. It's a Trans Inclusivity 101 poster, so it really kind of summarizes what we just went over today. And I wanted to share this. You can find these in a lot of spaces. This one is fun because, and I share it with a lot of my like younger spaces, is gender neutral terms that are available. So when we're stepping away from that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what else can we use? And so there's some beautiful things on here, and they can be fun and they can really lighten the energy in a room. So it's a beautiful thing. And if there's things on here that you would love to add, please do. Let's see. I don't know if you want to pick your like favorites there. Yeah, there's a lot of fun ones. If we, hello everyone, good evening, good afternoon. We're happy to have the team together. There's really neat things that we can do with that. Guys and gals and non-binary pals, absolutely. I'm just gonna jump to Jill's here. When thinking about potentially outing someone, how do you manage or think about using their correct pronouns that they've shared with you? I think with this, it's important to kind of pay attention to how much information we need to share. So if we're talking about somebody, if we can keep them anonymous, then that's probably the best thing to do. If another thing too is to check in with that person. So say like if somebody at work or within a family or friend group, if they are in the process of transitioning or have changed name or pronouns, it's really awesome to check in and be like, hey, can I help you with sharing this at all? Or are there spaces where you like definitely don't want me to share in any way? And that's a conversation that can be had because and they'll have an answer like fairly easy. The thing is, like, it can be tricky. So even when I work with Skipping Stone and I introduce myself as a parent, I am outing one of my kids. And that is like, I'm aware of that, and it's huge. So it's something that I always kind of think about is like, will it contribute to this discussion? And how can it possibly compromise my child at all? And does it create more space for conversation? And so if there are spaces where people know me, like in like where I live, I likely won't say it. I also have a kiddo who has ADHD and no filter or inhibition, and so she'll run to the park and announce that she's trans. So, but she doesn't know of the impact of that. So I would think truly it would be very rare that there is any reason to share that personal information with anyone. And so it would be a pretty specific circumstance where that would be okay. So, awesome. And definitely feel free to email me if you have more to add to that or anything else or want more clarification. A huge takeaway that I feel, especially in the work that you're doing in general around equity, diversity, and inclusion, is that somebody's well-being and safety will always, always, always need to be valued over somebody's discomfort. We have been taught really tough stuff. A lot of this has to be unlearned. So around racism and ableism and homophobia and transphobia, fat phobia, like body, like so many things. And especially if it's something that somebody cannot control, it's not a choice that they're making. To me, that automatically lets you know where this equation is. Their well-being will absolutely need to come over somebody else's discomfort. And it doesn't matter the age and anything else. So we are at the end. I hope anywhere along the way, or where, especially with gender diversity, if you do feel any type of discomfort, that's likely from our culture, norms, and values. And I really encourage people to kind of like sit with it and really try to lean into, you know, so what, I'm uncomfortable because I've been told or I've learned that there's a threat here, or something that is not okay. But if we spend some time in that, I've yet to find what's not okay with somebody being their authentic self and doing what they need to live freely. So I invite people to sit with that discomfort and reach out and connect. And that learning is okay. That's the human side of things. A question here from Ryan is, what are my thoughts on the representation of trans folks in advertising? And if we've seen it done well or done in ways that are problematic? I don't know if you've seen oh, I guess this is about trans folks, but a recent ad that Burger King put out for to celebrate Pride was like, I don't know if they had anybody on their team that was from the community, because the ad wouldn't have gone out if somebody was. They showed a burger that was like 2 burgers that were like all bottom pieces and then all top pieces, and anyways, highly problematic. So I think a huge thing is who's on the team and who is having input. So if it is a team of cisgender people creating an ad and they're trying to just have representation, to really lean into like why and how can that be done effectively. And you really need to have somebody from any of those minority spaces be able to play into that, because we don't want to tokenize or play into any kind of norm expectation, or oh gosh, what's the word? If somebody else can help me out with it. When you are like, when somebody is like expected to be a certain way. I'm just thinking of somebody else. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, new message. Stereotype. Thank you. It's not coming. Yes. So that's where I think it's a really important question, Ryan. If you can lean into, like, I'd recommend watching Laverne Cox's disclosure, because our references for gender diversity across the board are not positive ones. And quite often companies who are doing big campaigns, and they're including like diversity around gender or orientation. There was a big one by Samsung that was, I think was Samsung, released in Singapore, and it caused like a huge outroar. One, it absolutely make waves, but are they being done for the right reasons? And is that company willing to stand behind why it did that? If it was just kind of clickbait, that's not. But representation is huge. So if you think of like how many diverse kinds of families there are and how do we convey that? Like I live in Okotoks and I'm pretty sure every school only has white people and like, so cisgender, heterosexual, like white picket fence families portrayed in like all of the stuff that I see, that pertains to like display how good of a school this is. So representation is huge, for so many ways. But yeah, are we leaning into stereotypes? Are we doing it from a genuine place? And are we setting up other things to make sure that we are doing this that's from an informed space? And are we open to feedback? Next question. As parents and as people in the workplace, you're constantly challenged with what you know and understand. What would you say is the biggest suggestion you would have for working alongside children? And do you see it being different in the workplace? I wonder if, I can't remember who's behind that, as parents and as people in the workplace. So yes, we are, if I understood that right, so we're constantly needing to negotiate what is the norm accepted and what we're expected to kind of like the lines that we're supposed to play within. If people who are working with kids, there's so much that we can speak to in creating spaces that are safer for kids. So like, and then there's research done from like, and these are older studies. So like an infant was people were asked to watch an infant and the infant had a diaper on, so we didn't know body parts. How we treat infants based on the pronouns we're given or what we're told or what we're not told differs hugely. So we absolutely, like if we're told that somebody is a little boy, we're going to take away things like dolls and things that are pink or purple, and we're going to give them trucks. And if they fall down, we're going to like pick them up, brush them off, and like let go, and there's no more physical touch. If we're told that an infant is a female or a girl, there's a little more flexibility with what we're going to allow her to play with, and we're probably not taking toys away. And if she happens to fall and get hurt, we are scooping that child into our arms. There's tons of physical touch. There's tons of vocal cues and check-ins, and there's check-ins that happen after. So there are huge things that we do systematically in how we treat people differently. Thank you, Elena. I can absolutely pass along the presentation deck. Totally. And then the other question was about, do we provide support to parents who would like guidance in raising? Absolutely. You totally can. A lot of times, like there's incredible resources for that. The support that we provide most parents and families is for kiddos who have stepped forward to say and share, like, you know what, part of me is this. So email me, I'll include my email here, or other folks here can pass it along, but it's just Haley@skippingstone.ca. Happy to pass along resources on that. There are incredible resources out there, and I don't think that people are facing quite the backlash that they used to. Thank you for coming. I don't know if I'm happy I can be here for a little bit today. You're on your way. So if there's other questions, this was lovely. And you're at a different level of a lot of businesses and professionals and humans that I come across. So I'm grateful for you taking the time today and connecting to this space the questions you shared and everything else. Oh, holy, I'm rereading the one posted. Oh, recent learning for me about pronouns. So as a cis male, I still try to put an effort toward making room for others. And for me, I went through the last few years thinking pronoun use for cisgender men was a more performative behavior. And I wasn't convinced that it made much difference. After a deep and colorful conversation with people in the community, I learned just how important it is for cis men, especially to demonstrate and promote the use of pronouns. Heck, yes. Cis men, oh, yes, I can. Thank you. Yeah, truly cis men and cis white men, absolutely that is where the powers lay. And if we are not getting direction and genuine allyship from those other spaces, it means a lot. So anything, and I love what you spoke to. It's just a matter like, you know, if you don't get something, but it kind of is persistent in our culture and in conversations, then there's probably a reason why that's there. And how do you find out the why behind it is beautiful. And then quite often it's like, you know, I never thought about it that way. And that is huge. So I love what you just spoke to with that.
All right. I think if there aren't more questions coming, then perhaps that was actually my comment.
Thank you.
I felt I had to kind of share that because it was such a learning for me. Oh, it looks like we did get something that just popped in here. There we go. Looks like you've got one more here, Haley.
Jordan. Yeah, so the question is, if a space only has gendered bathrooms and we can't make a new one, what do we recommend? So to me, there's the one option. The first thing then is, are you able to make that an inclusive space so that somebody can use the bathroom that they are most comfortable using, regardless of parts that they may or may not have? And can that be done at a structural and cultural level within an organization? The other option would be we're in a downtown building in Calgary. On our floor, the bathrooms are gendered. You can use whichever one you want. However, there's also a gender neutral bathroom on the main floor. So it's going forward, like if we were to design our own, we probably wouldn't do it that way. And it's tricky because if somebody comes in, we're on the 12th floor, so they've got to run down out of a session with us and go try to find a gender neutral washroom. So the other thing is, yeah, just kind of really being aware of do those bathrooms have to stay gendered, or can you change the display so that it says it somehow portrays male identifying people and non-binary people more comfortable using with this space, and then vice versa. But it has to be conversation. And that bathroom, what I really want to stress too is that bathroom hesitation, especially around trans women using public female restrooms, that pushback of people not feeling safe in those environments, truly what that is actually about is about a cisgender man getting into a space where women are supposed to feel safe and doing harm. So the fear actually, and the conversation should not be about a transgender woman or a trans feminine identifying person using a bathroom space. Who we are actually needing to talk about in those conversations, because those aren't the people that are threatening or doing harm. They need to go pee. So the bathroom conversation is huge. If somebody is trans feminine and needing to use a bathroom, they also want to be safe and just go pee. what we're needing to talk about is like who's actually threatening to do the harm and who are we referring to, because it is not trans women. So that's something I'd like to, that's often a like a aha thing, because like statistically violence across North America, you're not looking at minorities, you're looking at white cisgender male people, yet the finger is getting pointed at every other minority across the way. So
Yeah, and I think also the clarity of identity, the clarity of acknowledging that someone who is, you know, someone who chooses that identity is living as that identity. There is no like that's it. And so that acknowledgement is 100%, like you either do or you don't. And it's so interesting, like through your presentation, to kind of really try to absorb that and understand that. Like being a multiracial man myself, it's like I don't have a choice necessarily in those things happening. And so, you know, that identity is something that, you know, I've adopted, and only because I don't have a choice, all the power structures tell me what I am.
yeah.
So, you know, to see and understand that, you know, those identities are just as crystallized, are just as clear and clarified, and that even though the looser conversation is still happening, those people are those people. And so, you know, making the calculations around that, it's very different. It's because, you know, a lot of the stuff starts to fall away when you get to that level of clarity. So, you know, this is a big takeaway for me. Yeah.
It is, and it's especially because that's the thing, like in the work that I do, like I meet a lot of parents who are just starting the journey, and I mean sometimes depending where that is, it can feel like they're on a runaway freight train, and we're connecting to people who are in absolute chaos zone of fear. But it's just taking that step back and being like, so like what's the threat here? Like because it's easy to get swept up in, and especially if you've got doctors and other educated and respected professionals, or and that's the thing, is it's always from like good intentions, like I'm saying this because I love you and I'm worried. And so it's so important that, like, you know, recognize that discomfort, but then pause and be like, wow, like, and I love like you're again like how we can all speak to our identities with that is like there's so much that's imposed upon us from outside spaces that's like doesn't ask for agency, right? It's not a check-in with you of like, hey, how do you identify and what has this experience been like for you? How many times have you been asked where you were born, but where were you really born? Like all of that. And so like that's where this all benefits everyone. So yeah, I appreciate your team, the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting pretty tight for time, so I think well, we may need to close things up here, just in being respectful of others. And you know, we're still midweek. You know, we all have things to do. So
Absolutely.
with that, thank you so much, Haley. And thank you to Skipping Stone for this presentation. It was so loaded with takeaways and learnings, and just so much to just really just take some action with, not just absorb, but also take some action with. And that was really cool. Also great that there's resources on your website. So we'll be sure to share that as well in our notes. And we're going to also have a recording of this on our website as well for our members. Special thanks also to Jordan Mayer and ZGM Marketing Partners, for Modern Marketing Partners, for their support of this event and their ongoing support of ACE over the years, including several of our DEI events. You know, it's our vision to bring events like this to our membership, and it's only through our partners that we're able to realize those things. So thank you. I also want to thank our co-presenter, the Calgary Marketing Association. They have been an outstanding partner as well, and we look forward to doing even more together this year. But yeah, fundamentally, the ACE board wants to thank all of our guest presenters and sponsors for their contribution to the DEI series that we did this year. It was really a vessel that came from the interests of the membership. And so, we were just feel really blessed that we were able to facilitate this. Further still, we want to thank the members at large who continue to suggest these ideas and other professional development ideas. We are taking an active role listening to you, so please keep them coming. And on behalf of the Ad Club of Edmonton, thank you and have a great week.